Hello! Today we're looking at the four main types of conditional sentences in English. We also have mixed conditionals, but we're not looking at those today. You can find them in your book. I won't test you on them, but it's good for you to know about them anyway. So we're looking at the four main types. Okay, let's start. So I've just been to the local supermarket for some food, and it's quite sunny today, really. A few clouds around. And I'm totally dry. But I don't have an umbrella with me. And so what normally happens is that if it rains, I get wet. Okay? That's just what normally happens. If it rains, I get wet. Or I can also say, whenever it rains, I get wet. This is the zero conditional. We can also use it in the same way for the past. So back when I was living in the Netherlands, I used to cycle, I didn't have an umbrella. Whenever it rained, I got wet. Whenever it rained, I got wet. That's a zero conditional, so it can be used both in the present and in the past. You will find more about the zero conditional and the other conditionals, of course, in your grammar book. I'm just giving you a quick overview here. If it rains, comma, I get wet. Whenever it rains, comma, I get wet. And then in the past, if or whenever it rained, I got wet. Okay, whenever it rained, comma, I used to get wet. If we have the subclause first, at our university we always have a comma after that. Always. Okay? Let's have a look at it, these four sentences with the main clause first. I get wet if it rains. I get wet whenever it rains. I got wet whenever it rained. I used to get wet whenever it rained. No comma, as you can see. So with the last sentence, for example, I used to work in Iceland, in Reykjavik, and it was always so windy there that it was impossible to use an umbrella. So I used to always get wet whenever it rained. Before setting off today, I looked up at the clouds. I thought, well, there's a possibility of rain, but I'm still not going to take an umbrella. I just thought, hey, if it rains today, I'll get wet. If it rains today, I will get wet. Okay, so it's possible. This is the first conditional. Notice when we have the part with if it rains, that's the subsidiary clause, the Nebensatz, we don't put a will into that half. We don't say if it will rain. The will only goes into the half which is the main clause, the Hauptsatz. If it rains, I'll get wet. And if you're wondering about the difference between the main clause and the subclause, I will get wet can be a sentence by itself. If it rains, can't, unless you're being all poetical. Okay? Notice this was the same with when. In the last class we had the future examples, when I arrive, it will be raining. I didn't say when I will arrive. It's the same thing. Seems to be a lot of rain in these videos at the moment. If it rains today, comma, I'll get wet. I'll get wet if it rains today. I have an evil twin. Not really, but let's pretend I do. I have an evil twin who lives in the middle of the desert in Australia, for example. And sometimes this evil twin phones me just to be evil. He knows I live in cold, wet Europe. Sometimes he phones me and he says, "G'day, mate." Don't worry, I won't do the accent. But he says to me, "I'm looking out over the desert and there's no chance of rain." And then he says, "I'll be going out without an umbrella, and if it rained today, I would get wet. If it rained today, I would get wet." Does he think it will rain? No, it's just theory. It's a theoretical possibility. Okay. Now you might be thinking, hang on, David, haven't we heard things like, if it would rain today, I would get wet? But no, we only want the would to be in one half of the sentence, just like with will. You might be thinking, but I've heard that. And yes, you have. Especially in America, especially among young people, and also increasingly in Britain as well. In fact, in your grammar book, for example, if you use My Grammar Lab Advanced, it will even say there's a page in the back with differences in the grammar between Britain and America, and it will say that it's okay in American English to use would there. Well, I've consulted with our American section in our department, and you really wouldn't, even in America, especially in, say, academic writing and university language, you would not see would in both halves. So we want you to stick with, if it rained today, I would get wet. And if you put would in the other half, it will be marked as being wrong in your exam, just so you know. Okay? At least the rules are clear. Right, that's the second conditional. If it rained today, I'd get wet. I would get wet. I'd get wet if it rained today. And not if it would rain. I get home at the end of the day and I'm sitting in my living room, sitting on my rocking chair. Yes, I have a rocking chair. Oh, I can show you. Oh well. And I'm dry. There was no rain. But I think back to an unreal past. I think to myself, if it had rained today, I would have got wet. If it had rained today, I would have got wet. In American English, if it had rained today, I would have gotten wet. Okay? So that's the third conditional for an unreal past. Okay? Someone cycled past and thought that I was filming her. I wasn't, obviously. You know that. Anyway, that's the third conditional. If it had rained today, comma, I would have got wet. But it didn't, so I didn't. Yay! I would have got wet if it had rained today. In American English, would have gotten wet. So finally, please do the exercises in your grammar book about conditionals, read the information as well, of course, and in the next class we're going to have some exercises in the design of the exam, obviously, like everything on this course, and they will look at the future and what's the other thing we did recently? Modal verbs and conditionals. So there's going to be a mixture of the three of them with exam-like questions. I bet you can't wait. Okay, see you then.